Well, guys, I guess I'm back. I wasn't quite sure whether I should continue or not. Um, you found out that, or I'd let you know lately that I'm actually originally from Germany, and I stayed in Germany, lived there for the first 23 years of my life. I then went to Canada, stayed there for 8 years, and then came to the United States. I'm now almost 80 years old. My God, I mean, this is unbelievable. But today I'm a little under the weather, so excuse my voice if it's a little bit rough. But I just saw Peter's video of his school days, and I thought maybe I ought to tell you about my school days. And when I was six, of course, you went to school for the first year, and the custom in Germany at the time was that every child going to school would get a sort of a paper bag, which is really a paper funnel, very elegant, very big, and it's full of chocolates and full of candy. And that is the custom, and it's still being carried on to this day. When I went to school first, and I was, as I say, I was 6 years old, so that was in 1933. That was the very year that Hitler came to power. And of course, I can tell you a few things about those years, and frankly, I've been putting it off because I can see some of these nasty comments that good old Peter gets, and my God, if Peter gets nasty comments, you can imagine what I would be getting. So, and I don't have to put myself through this. But on the other hand, I think maybe all of you guys ought to know a little bit more about how life was over on the other side during those days. And my understanding and my life is now American, has been American since 1951, really. So I have the domestic viewpoint, or the American viewpoint, by talking about the German times. And since in Germany we were desperate, and towards the very end of the war, we did not have enough people. So that I was also called up, and I was not only in the military, but before that I was in the anti-aircraft, and then after that in the labor service. So I've gone the whole routine. Then I went into combat, and I was captured. I was a POW. I escaped from a POW camp. So there are some interesting episodes in my life, but I'm a little hesitant talking about them because of some of these, especially the young kids who don't know anything. They seem to pretend to know everything, and I would like to be able to present my ideas in a well, I don't know, political correctness comes into the picture too, and there are certain things you can say and certain things you're expected to say, and that aren't really true. If you went by the common opinion now, then out of the 68 million Germans at the time, about 67,900,000 wanted nothing to do with Hitler, and of course that's a lot of baloney. So today everybody is denying everything, and nobody was gung-ho, and that's really not true. So I would like to present it in the proper way, and I would like to be tactful about it. I'd like to be concerned about feelings of other people. But I also would like to tell you the truth. There's no sense in just telling you baloney stories. Everybody was against it, nobody liked it, and that wouldn't make any sense. So I'm really trying to sort of smooth the road until we get to the point where this becomes critical. Right now I'm telling you about my school days, and of course that's something that's rather generic and should not be a big problem. So as far as punishment in schools is concerned, as Peter pointed out, he did receive some of it, and of course in our school that was common as well. We had the art teacher who was actually very much against that and would not use physical punishment no matter what. But as a rule, many of them did. And quite frankly, I'm not concerned about it, and it didn't do me any harm. I got whacked around a couple of times, but so what? I mean, I was a young kid, and I probably had it coming. So, but there was one guy that was particularly nasty. He was a sadist, really. For instance, this is what he did. A guy did something wrong and had to be punished. So he had him come up to the front, and he would have to ask the teacher for a key. The teacher would hand him the key. A big dramatic show. The boy would take the key and go to a cabinet, unlock the cabinet, take out a rod, go to the teacher, bend over, teacher would whack him, and then the boy would have to ask for the key again, go back, close it, and bring the rod back, close the cabinet, and thank the teacher. Now, I thought that was a bit over the limit, but the other guy that was nasty and was a little unpredictable and had a big ruler and that he liked to use, had been wounded in World War I with a head injury, and so they gave him a lot of leeway because of that and kept an eye on him. But one boy got his eardrum smashed, some problem with his ear caused by that. But of course the Germans aren't as quick to sue as Americans are, so here you wouldn't get very far with that, injury or no injury. But those were the punishments in the public school in the very early years. Now when you became 10 years old, 4 years later, you would go to another school, a high school, and that would be in another city. In my case, I would have to commute about 12, 13 miles by, well, at one time my parents would drive me, my chauffeur would drive me to the school. Later on, that wasn't possible anymore. There wasn't enough fuel, so we went by train. It was actually one car attached to a freight train, and that was a passenger car. And because it fitted into the schedule, now, naturally there were regular trains running as well, and we used those too at times, and especially I think going back, we came by regular train going down to the school, we had to use the freight train. But that brought some problems with it, because when you are a student in transit, you really don't get to know your schoolmates all that well. They're in the city, and they go back to the city, they play ball in the city, and they communicate with each other. In my case, I was sort of isolated. I mean, I met them during school time, but the rest of the time I was at home. We had a large farm, if you will, and I was sort of isolated. But I had a wonderful life, and I certainly can't complain. My father and my mother were just great, and life couldn't have been easier. So I had it very, very easy and very nice in the early years. Of course, at the end, well, if there is such a thing as Americans say about from, what is it, you work your way up from nothing and you become rich, and I did it the other way around. You started out rich and then you ended up with absolutely nothing. At one time I had not even a place to sleep. So, you know, you can have that situation too, and then you work your way back up again. Well, as for the school, now we had odd teachers. In the high school later on, we had some teachers who were very much affiliated with the party, that's the Nazi party, and they were members. They wore their little flag on the lapel. By the way, that brings back happy memories when I see that happening here now all the time, with people running around with the flag on their lapel. It gives me flashbacks that are not all that pleasant. But of course it's a different situation, but it's just as an aside. Please don't make a big deal about it. The guy that was one of them was a party official, and occasionally he came in his brown uniform, very much of we call it lametta, much of the silver foil on it, and lapels and that sort of thing. And he was a propaganda guy, and we really thought he was fascinating, because he was sort of a detective, and when something was stolen in school, he would find out who the culprit was, and he had a really amazing way of doing that. Then my English teacher, on the other hand, was an Englishman who had come over to the Germans. He liked the German Nazi Party, and he was more Nazi than the Germans, and but he was a fantastic English teacher, and all of the little English that I did learn, I learned from him. He was a disciplinarian. He liked to mete out discipline. I guess he didn't have as much of that opportunity in England, maybe. So he had a tendency to twist your hair on the side of your head, and and sort of twirl it around. It hurts like the dickens, you know, when you do that. It's on the here on the side of the head, you know, you twist it around like this, and you do like that, and wiggle it back and forth, and I can tell you, it really hurts. So we didn't like that too much, and but most of the teachers were very decent, and especially the older we got, the more respectful they became towards us, and it became sort of a situation where they addressed us properly, and we were treated like human beings. But then came a day in 1942, in May, when I was 15 years old. My mother had been out on a big hunt with my father and many other people, and she caught a cold, and it got worse and worse, and she got pneumonia, and she got pleurisy on top of that, and at a very short time she died. So I lost my mother when I was 15, and that was a real trauma. My father and my mother were so close. I mean, they were always cuddling, they were always kissing, and it was just absolutely a fantastic marriage. So it fell apart, and it took my father, really he took it very hard. And he decided then at that time that it was time to send me and my sister, who was 2 years younger even, to boarding schools. And I was sent to a boarding school in Berlin. Now, I don't know, you know about the war at the time. That was in 1942 when my mother died, and 1942 or 1943, I think, no, 42, he sent me to Berlin. Now, I don't think it was the smartest thing in the world to do, because Berlin was getting bombed, and that happened during the day too. And so there was a certain danger in sending me there. Well, the place where I come from was out in the boonies, and nobody would bother to drop any bombs there. They wouldn't hit anything but cows. So for a while I was in Berlin, and it was the time when we had this, by saying we now, I'm talking about the Germans, because at that time I was German, so at that time it's we. And some people may object to that, but how else can I differentiate? I have to be somewhere. So anyway, that was, we lost the Battle of Stalingrad, and it was traumatic. I still remember this to this day. We were all so upset, and we were so frightened by this whole thing. We were feeling that the war was about lost, and that's a horrible feeling. So that happened in Berlin, and other than that, I didn't like the school. It was very cliquey, and eventually my father realized, after we had one air raid and one of our buildings in that school was hit, a few of the students lost their lives, and my father decided enough is enough, come back. So he brought me back, and I went back to our town. Now, this was also sometime after school in this town. It was a small town up near the Baltic. I went and had my hair cut, and while I was sitting in the barber chair and was half done, there was an air raid siren going off, and there was an air raid on that little town. It was not that little, but anyway, 60,000 people or so. And it was a real nasty one, and I had to go through that as well, and I just made it by the skin of my teeth, really. And I still had the skirt, or you know, this sort of a skirt that the barber puts on you in order to prevent the hair from falling on your suit. I still had that on. It was half shorn, and I was walking back towards my home, which was about, as I told you, 12 miles away or so. And while I was doing that, my father came towards me on his motorcycle. He had a motorcycle then. And he came by, and instead of being all upset about me and taking me on his motorcycle and taking me home, I thought this is what he should do. He said, no, come on, son, let's go back and let's see if we can help. And I was really admiring him for that, and I thought it was the right gesture to have, and the right thing to show me as an example. So I jumped on the motorcycle, and we went back into town, and we tried to pull people out of rubbish, and you know, the normal things that happen after an air raid. And then we went back home again, and now it was the time when the next time we were in school in the summertime holidays approached. And when we were ready to go back to school, we were told, no, 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 you're not going back to school. You're going back to, the place was called Peenemünde. It doesn't mean anything to you, I'm sure, but it was the rocket research facility at the time where they tested the V2 rockets and where they were manufacturing the V1 rockets. The V1 rocket was called a buzz bomb, I think, by the British. It was an odd thing. It was a bomb that flew with a noisy engine, and when the engine started cutting out, then you knew it was going to come down. And of course, it was pretty unpredictable where it would come down, so they were not very accurate, these things. But the V2 was much more sophisticated and faster and harder to detect and virtually impossible to shoot down, while the V1, they were getting pretty skillful at getting them down. So we were told that our school was going to be relocated to Peenemünde. Well, it turned out we were issued uniforms. We were stationed in Peenemünde. We were given our old curriculum, complete, without letting anything off. Latin was still there, English was still there, and one day I got ticked off because of so many subjects, and I got ballistics on top of that because of the anti-aircraft weapons that we had to use, and all that training. So I was a smartass, and I came up to the teacher and I said, you know, why the hell are we learning English? We're going to win the war, right? So when we do, why don't we let them all speak German? What do we need English for? He said, Bernie, that's a good try, but you ain't going to get away with this. You're going to learn English whether you like it or not. Well, of course, that was more in jest than anything else, but we couldn't get away with it. And actually what it was is we were Air Force helpers. Now, the term alone was offensive to us. We thought we were now men, and we were manning the anti-aircraft guns, and the reason was they said, look, this is not a tough job. Anybody can do that. And we need these able-bodied men back in the front lines. So you guys can do this. And you have your schooling, and if there is an air raid or if there's any reason for you to man the guns, we're subtracting that time, and we're going to make up for it. So that was not a very nice situation. And there were a couple of interesting incidents. I was at a radar. The radar was brand new at the time. It had just come out. And there was a radar device, and then I was really at we called it a child's coffin. It was where you had instruments on a coffin-like box, sitting in a bunker, 3 instruments on each side, so there were 6 instruments, and they were actually, you had to read them and over a microphone, submit the information to a distribution center where they could be used in order to direct the guns, whether they should be up or down, and the wind, one of the instruments detected the wind speed, and one of them the direction of the wind, and one of them the degree to which the gun should be turned, and so et cetera, et cetera. And occasionally we did get some aircraft and shut them down. We had 88 guns, the 88 millimeter guns. They were excellent. They were really something. And we had several batteries. And for us to get to our guns, we had to have 2 passes. A total of 3 passes were necessary to get to the real heart of the installation where the rockets were made. And we didn't get to that. We only got as far as the outer perimeter where the guns were. But I had a funny incident once. When you shot down an aircraft, the battery that was involved in shooting it down was allowed to paint a white ring around the barrel. Now, after one night where we managed to get quite a few planes down, we were claiming 3 planes. We knew we had shot down 3 planes. When the major inspected the batteries the next morning, he saw one battery with 4 rings on it. And he said, Jesus, I didn't know about that. What about the 4? I think we only had 3 that we got. Well, the sergeant said, no, sir, we're 4. Well, he said, I got to check that out. Where's the 4th one? He said, there was one German plane that was shot down, but he said, yep, that's a plane. And the major was not amused. That ring had to be removed. So by mistake, they shut down one of the night fighters. And that ring was painted on the gun. Well, anyway, that was our stint in Peenemünde. Peenemünde is actually the research facility where von Braun was, and you may know about von Braun. So that was a little excitement that we had there. But then I got home, and the next stint was in the labor service. And I will tell you about that the next time. But the labor service was something that I greatly admired, and I think it's something that we should have today. It doesn't have to be party allied, but it's a wonderful thing to keep boys off the street, mix them all together, put them in an environment that is good for them, and let them do some constructive work. So many things could be done here in the same way, and I think Roosevelt at one time had a very similar program. Nothing is original, you know. Everything was stolen from somebody else. Well, anyway, let this be enough for today, and we'll just stop it for now and see what comes of it.